Gentlemen, welcome into In the Clutch episode 6 now. We're just flying by already through 7 weeks or going into week 7 of the IHSA football season. I'm joined alongside Jonathan Michael and Michael Savoie, guys. We are really getting close to playoff football.
Yeah, we definitely are. It's really hard to believe we're already two-thirds of the way through the regular season. It feels like we should be in like week 4 or week 5. We already have 9 teams, I think, in our area that are clinched in the playoffs, and you got 8 teams that are sitting at 4-2. So I know that's well over half of the teams that we cover, all having great seasons. And there's still a lot left to be decided. Some things have been decided, and some things have not. So obviously we have a little bit more clarity on some things now, but we're gonna get strap in for these final 3 weeks because if you're not paying attention yet, you really should be now.
Yeah, John hit it right on the head. There's a lot of teams that either clinched last week or clinched this week. So you're starting to see the cream of the crop start to clinch their playoff spots, and now you're starting to see all these conference races heat up. So it's a great time to be a football fan, really anywhere in Illinois, but especially Central Illinois.
There definitely are a lot of teams really starting to assert themselves as the best, but there's also some teams kind of finding some things out. There is a reason why the regular season is 9 weeks. It's not a 7 week season. It's not a 6 week season. There's still time to go. There's still room for teams to improve and get ready for the playoffs and even, clinch that spot in the playoffs, like you said. A couple of games, we did this week. You guys were at the WMBD. John was at the WMBD game, not Michael, but I just want to talk about the game I covered, the small town throwdown game. That game was really a good one. St. Joseph Ogden ended up winning 38-19 and was the game was a lot closer than the score might entail, especially through the first half. It was like, neck and neck and a lot of big plays. Cody McKinney and wide receiver Coy Taylor were just on fire all game long, making huge plays, one-handed grabs, multiple touchdown receptions, and just perfect connection all game long. It was a joy to see for sure.
Yeah, Bloomington Central Catholic boys, played a heck of a schedule so far. The good news for the Saints is that it gets a bit easier here over the next couple of weeks. I was really curious going into that game though to see, if coming off a big win against Tolono Unity, if they'd be able to, keep it going and take down St. Joseph Ogden and the Illini Prairie. But yeah, I was talking with Joey Wright and Zach Pyatt from the News Gazette on a radio show last Friday with them, and that Illini Prairie is just such a strong conference. In BCC, even though that the best case scenario for them is finish the regular season 6-3, I still think it's a team that can go deep into the playoffs, and has still has a lot of weapons on both sides of the ball.
Definitely could,
Yeah,
and
Central
that sets up a
Catholic. Sorry, sorry, Teddy. Yeah, Central Catholic, a team that entering the year had a lot of high hopes as being one of the really good teams, especially in our coverage area. But it hasn't gone totally to plan for them. But I think honestly, I think they're still a playoff team in my eyes. So I have my eyes on the Saints that finish the season strong.
There's a lot of promising moments for them throughout the game. Like I said, seemed like the score was a little bit closer than it ended up being. But one last thing I'll say on this game, and then we want to talk about the normal community and Bloomington game real quick. But that sets up a Week 9 matchup with Paxton Buckley Loda. With St. Joseph Ogden, that's going to be a great game. Those two teams atop of their conferences, undefeated so far this season, and that'll be a good test to see who can really end up that crown in the conference. And as for you guys, the normal community Bloomington game. That was a cool game. We were looking over at halftime at our game, and it looked like that was a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, definitely. It was a close first half. Bloomington struck first, a long touchdown pass from AJ Codron at Jordan Norton, Bloomington's number 2 wide receiver, who had a heck of a ball game, finished with over 100 receiving yards, plus that touchdown. So, Codron, had distributed the ball well among his 3 receivers. Keontae Hamilton is his main guy and has been for the last year or two, but did a good job spreading the ball around, keeping community off balance. But once the second quarter rolled around, there was a couple of big plays that shifted the momentum in community's favor. The biggest of which was a blocked punt that was recovered by Jace Wilson for a touchdown that tied the game at 7. Not only did it tie the game, but it also, unfortunately, knocked out Bloomington's star player Mikey Kimball, who's their starting linebacker, but is also the team's starting punter and also number 2 running back as well. And he got banged up pretty good, did not return the rest of the game. And so, again, certainly hope that he is okay. He's such a huge piece to that Bloomington team. But when you lose your punter, we kind of saw what happened. It really is, a injury to a position that could be devastating because Bloomington, they tried to punt one other time after that, after Kimmel left the game, and ended up being a fumbled snap and recovered for a safety for Normal Community. That pushes it 23-14 right after the halftime break. And then, then after that, Bloomington didn't punt the rest of the game. And then they were faced with many third and fourth downs. Community's defense was phenomenal, did not allow Bloomington to convert. And then Bloomington turned the ball over on downs multiple times deep in their own territory. And so that's what's kind of, tilted the scales in Normal Community's favor. They got the ball back. And then they had some one play scoring drives as well. So, I mean, you just couldn't give Community good field position. Unfortunately, Bloomington did, and I know they got their first loss this season. But great game for both teams. I think Bloomington will still be all right. Normal Community though looks like the real deal yet again.
I definitely,
Yeah,
definitely do.
oh,
Right.
sorry. So when I covered Community back a few weeks ago when they played Kankakee, you can tell that they came in that game with a lot of confidence. They left that game with confidence the rest of their season. And you can see that in the games that they have played so far, like against Bloomington, a really good Bloomington team. They probably, like you said, John, before, and I've heard on the broadcast too about that game. They came in that game as underdogs. And if you have a team like Normal Community that's as stout as Normal Community coming in a game as underdogs, having that underdog mentality, that is scary. And I look out for the rest of the 7A class, and they look like they're the real deal, like John said.
And side note too, looking at Class 7A, there are some teams in the top 10 that took some big losses this past week. I was looking to see, in the AP poll, who won, who lost, and you look at number one, Mount Carmel. They lost to Brother Rice 16-13 last week. Number two also lost. That was Batavia. They fell to 6A state ranked Geneva. And then number three, St. Rita also lost as well to Nazareth Academy, who's the number one team in Class 5A. But there were some big losses in 7A, and it's a very stacked class. I would almost argue that some of the football is better in Class 7A than it could be in Class 8A. I think you can make that case. But it showed that there are some other teams in Class 7A that are human that can lose a football game, and I think that when Normal Community gets to the playoffs again, it shouldn't be. I don't be a surprise for many people in Central Illinois, but everyone in the state just generally shouldn't be surprised if Community could be the team of that caliber.
Definitely not. And we're going to get into some more week six action, but we're going to talk for a second. We're going to bring on Dee-Mack head coach Cody Myers. Probably should have introduced that at the beginning. That's my apology. He's got a big week this week against a conference rival in El Paso-Gridley. Should be joining us in just a second. But that Dee-Mack team is a team. They're sitting at 3-3 right now through 6 weeks and played some tough competition. But overall, they're a team that can, if they win this week, they can have a chance of winning out the rest of the season. And two pretty decent games that they, with an opportunity to win, it could be sitting at 6-3 at the end of the year.
Definitely. And Cody is entered our waiting room now. So right on cue, we'll bring him in here in just a second. But you said it, Teddy. Huge game for Dee-Mack this week against El Paso-Gridley. Both teams 3-3, and it's going to be a dandy of a ball game. I mean, whoever wins that game is gonna really look good going into the playoffs. Is now we're joined by the man himself, Cody Myers from Dee-Mack. How's it going, Coach?
What's going on, guys? My favorite people, man. How are you?
We're
We're
doing
doing
pretty good, Coach.
awesome.
We're glad to have you on,
Hey,
and we're excited to talk about some Week 7 football with you guys. You got 3-3 going into this week. There's another team that's 3-3. You're very familiar with El Paso Gridley. What are some things you're thinking about going into this week?
yeah. Hey, we've had basically a game at El Paso the last 3 years to decide if we're going to make the playoffs or not. So 2 years ago, we got down to the 1 yard line in the fourth quarter, end up getting backed up by penalties. We didn't get in. We ended up 4-5 that season. So that was the last minute of that game. Last year, we go over there. We had to win our last three to get in. They were coming off a huge victory over Eureka. They were the team of the week, basically. And Tanner does a great job. Tanner Benedict does a great job with those guys. And we went up 16-0 in the first quarter and upset those guys, won our last three to get in the playoffs. So that brings us to this year. Here we sit with a trip to El Paso. Just so happens to be, it looks like we both need this one. So should be really fun Friday night.
Yeah, definitely. And Coach, I know such a big thing about especially football at the small school level is you rely a lot on seniors. You had a great senior class last year, and
Yeah.
some new guys stepping in this year. I know guys like Max Eccles and Sean Deniston and Chuck Hathaway and some of those guys have really kind of started to come on. I mean, and it's just kind of that you know next man up mentality. It seems like I just wanted to kind of ask what you've seen out of those guys as kind of your team leaders this year. Maybe any other players I didn't mention as well.
Yeah. Going into my 5th year here in Mackinac, it's crazy. They told me, the one thing you'll always have is there's always going to be that kid who grew up wanting to be the Dee-Mack running back. And for 30 years, there's always a Dee-Mack running back, whether it's a good line or a bad line or good skill players or not. Same with the defense. You are going to have somebody who grew up and they're living their childhood dreams out here being the running back. And we've been blessed 5 years in a row. I have had multiple running backs come through that have been really good. Chuck Hathaway, Sean Deniston, and Max Eccles fall right off that same block. These guys have been awesome. Our schedule has been tough. So for 1 year and 1 year only, we are actually there's two schools that are in the small division of this new conference that are actually bigger than us, but due to us being Dee-Mack, they put us with the larger schools and thought we would fit in and we've played tough. We've played as hard as we could, but we've got a couple lumps and on our schedule there where we took some licks, and you always learn more from those situations. So for those kids to take those lumps and maybe it not be as easy that night as it has been in the past, and then to come back like last week and Max at 120 yards, Chuck threw for over 100. We've thrown the ball more this year than we have in the past with just the ability to Max can play some receiver. Max Eccles can. So it's been fun to just watch our quarterback spread it around. Like Chuck told me today, I tried to check a call during practice, and he looks at me and goes, I got it. And I was like, how do you know? He goes, Coach, I've been doing this for 4 years. So it's just cool that those guys are bought into the system and they understand win, lose, or draw. It's really cool to see that they're bought in.
Definitely, Coach. I just have one more question, and then I'll let Teddy and Michael ask questions as well. Obviously, you mentioned the new conference. You guys are in the large division. First off, again, I just want to clarify. So, I want to clarify and see if you guys are going to be moved to the small division next year, or if you're staying in the
Yeah.
large. And then
No,
also,
so after this year, it should be a 4-year deal where we will go to the small school division, which that sounds so terrible because there is some phenomenal football being played down there. Leroy beat Tri-Valley, and Tri-Valley may not have had all their guys, but Leroy beat them by 30 points, and they're winning the small school. Gibson City, who we did our week 0 scrimmage against, they're a phenomenal team. They've won 2 state championships in the last handful of years. They're down there. They're undefeated. So after this year, we'll move to that division. We'll have Hayworth. We'll have Gibson City, Leroy, Tremont, and us right now are with the larger schools that were with the Heart of Illinois. So we brought in Clinton and Shelbyville, and those are some really good competitive schools.
Definitely, Coach. I one question I have for you, a loss in week 7 would, obviously you want to win every week, but a loss in week 7 would put you guys under 500. You're 3-3 right now, and with 2 games left, if say you were to be at that 3 and 4 position, 2 games left, those are 2 crucial games. So how important is getting a win here in week 7 to really not necessarily not worry about those last 2 games, because you do have to try to win those as well. But how comforting is that? Would that be here in week 7?
So it's interesting because in Dee-Mack, the only thing people truly do care about outside of just doing the right thing for our kids is making the playoffs. They don't care about conference championships. They don't care about anything. Like, it is a thing. And, I ran into a couple people and they love Mackinac football. I was at the IGA here last week and we were coming off a thumping on our own homecoming. Shelbyville made the Final Four in 2A last year. They are no slouch. We're replacing a lot of our talent from last year's team. It's going to take some time to get it going. And these people said, hey, we got Tremont Friday. I said, hey, we're going to do what we do. They said, well, we hope so. right? They're fired up. They want us to win every week, and so do we. So, I know our kids have that backing in the community where they're going to come out, they're going to play hard. And, there's a little pressure there from the families and just the culture and the tradition that has been laid out before we all got there. So if we do not happen to get a victory, well, now you're sitting in the same spot we were last year. So we were 2-0 last year, lost our quarterback. We lost Tice Albritton, who's one of the best players I've ever coached, to a shattered hand and surgery. And we lost our running back to a broken foot. And they were all out 4 weeks. We were 2-0 with them. We were 0-4 without them. They came back for the last 3. We had to win the last 3 to get in. They did. And then they re-broke a foot, re-hurt a knee, re-hurt a hand. And so we were 0-5 without them, and we were 5-0 with them. So hopefully with all of our dudes, we can go over to El Paso Friday and just put on a good show, right? I mean, if you sit there and you worry about, oh my gosh, we've got to have this instead of the play call, that's something that I always worry about with high school kids. Like, hey, I know you feel like the weight of the world's on your shoulders, but just go have fun. Here in a few weeks, you might not ever get to play again.
Coach, like you said before, about El Paso-Gridley, you guys have played them 3 straight years. It seems like a pretty pivotal game for you guys. Do you guys view this game as like I shouldn't say a rivalry because as much as proximity goes, you guys aren't like close, but do you guys view this as like the game to like not just make the playoffs, but like I guess for make the playoffs. I can't think of another way to explain it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting. So Dee-Mack has one rival and one rival only. There's only one person that really gets our kids' blood boiling, and that's the Tremont Turks, right? That is the end all be all thing that everybody talks about. And anyone else who tried to step in and become a rival, it just hasn't. And they can claim it to be, or somebody can want it to be. And it might be like a yearly battle, but we just have a lot of respect for El Paso-Gridley. For whatever reason, they just do a phenomenal job over there. They play really clean football. And Tanner came in the year after I came into Dee-Mack, so I've kind of got to watch him grow up. He was 23 years old when he took that job. This is a tough gig. I mean, the world could be cruel to you. And Tanner took them from winless in the spring, which we were as well. And then we both made the playoffs that next year. We both made the second round in 2021. So I've just kind of watched Tanner from afar, and we've grown to be close friends and just see him do all the right things with his kids. And I think that's what makes it such a fun matchup for me is I know they'll be prepared. I know they take us seriously, and I know we think the same thing about them. So when you put all that together and the bus ride really isn't that far, and they've got a phenomenal facility over there, it's just a really cool atmosphere to do a game.
Definitely is, coach. And me personally, I'm from Pekin, but I've heard about this rivalry for years. My dad is from Tremont. Okay, he definitely isn't a big fan of D-Mac, but listen, I'm not a Turk. I like you guys, but one last thing I want to ask you, El Paso-Gridley, it's a big week, obviously. One thing they did this summer was they won our Clutch Sports Media Fan Base Award. They really went all out for that. And you're playing at El Paso-Gridley. How important is it to, not only just quiet that crowd, but it's gonna be hard to do. They're the champs for, the Fan Base Award. And so how important
Yeah.
is that gonna be?
So we got lucky last year. I'll tell you a little secret. So it was absolutely, if you guys remember week 7 last year, it was pouring down rain. It was just a monsoon. And we actually hit a flea flicker like 3 plays in. We were just going to take a shot. We got it. We went up 8-0. And boy, those rains hit, and those kids weren't quite as loud when it was raining. So it doesn't look like we're going to get that lucky Friday night. They are always about it. Like when you go over there, man, they're screaming, they're yelling, they're fired up. Their kids love their home field. They've got kids standing 5 deep in the end zone, right? They let them inside the fence, and that's its own deal. Like a lot of the schools, if you think about the Mid-Illini, when you have the track, you don't have kids down on the field. But at a school like that, they line them up and they're loud, and that can cause some problems. And then also it has a distraction level to it too. So anytime you get down there near that end zone, it's even worse when you're on defense, right? Because everybody's behind you and they're chirping, and our kids are trying to see who is saying what and getting fired up about it. And it just makes high school sports really cool. And as much as you want to say, hey, keep your head in the game, you're like, this is a really cool atmosphere for you guys to be in, because if you do make a play down there, it was right in front of them. right? And if they make a play down there, it's right in front of their own people too. So it just adds that extra element. It reminds me of like being at Bradley for a basketball game, right? All those people are right there on the field or right there down on the court. And so it just adds an extra element to it that our kids, I think, can handle in a good situation, right? Tri Valley does the same thing, Gibson City does the same thing, but it's pretty cool for our kids to just know that they're going to experience that, and it's going to be, a hostile environment. With all due respect to El Paso, they're usually pretty classy.
Do you guys practice that? Like, do you guys like in your practices like practice with like a ton of noise and
Yeah.
like it's pretty impressive
So
to
one
have
thing
that
we
be in a
do
small school.
Absolutely. One thing we do, we just practice with the radio on every day so our kids have to communicate, and it helps the time pass. I teach in the weight room, right? So I'm used to having background music, and it's like, okay, so we switch the radio station up a lot, and we'll just crank that music up, and that'll make our kids communicate. The thing that gives high school football players trouble is wind, right? When the wind is coming through the helmet and you can't really get the calls back and forth, that's a struggle when the quarterback's coming up and the receivers can't see. So hopefully it's not a distraction tomorrow night, but I've seen it work the other way as well. It's like, oh my goodness. I remember Peyton Manning a couple times, like in Denver, like, you guys got to calm down, man. You guys are so excited and so loud. So it should just be a great atmosphere. And, anytime there's noise and you've got kids nowadays that are so fired up to be part of something, I mean, you can't ask for more than that, right? I mean, the days of the great basketball student sections have really just kind of went by the wayside. Every once in a while, you'll see them get the ESPN table out, or they'll have a good fan night. But the football student sections around Central Illinois have really been crushing it, and I see that online every Friday. It's like, oh my goodness, look at the highlights of these people. It's tough to find good basketball ones anymore. That used to be the thing. Basketball student sections were the thing, and it's really cool to see even the small schools stepping up with some cool student sections.
Absolutely, coach. And I want to wish you the best of luck here in week 7, and going to be a great game, I'm sure. And just overall, thank you for joining us. And like I said, wish you the best of luck.
Hey, I appreciate all you guys. We're huge Clutch sports fans. I mean, our kids last year were saying clutch up, right? Like, I was like, hey man, what are we gonna do here? They're like, oh, I'm gonna clutch up, man. I'm like, hey, it's a
I love
thing,
it.
right? I got like Tice Albritton out there telling me he's clutching up. So hey, whatever you got to do, man, we need this play. So anyway, it's just cool to see you guys transition from the start of all of this. And it wasn't just you guys, but the start of all of this to carry over to meeting new faces. And, we just love hosting you guys. Whenever you guys come over to a game, we win, lose, or draw. We always give you our press box and we move to the smaller one because we want you guys to feel welcome.
Wait, we certainly appreciate it. We love being there. I know we were there so 2 of the first 3 weeks, and hopefully, hey, maybe we'll be back for one of these final weeks, or possibly, the fingers crossed, the playoffs as well. So,
Absolutely.
Cody, again, just for me, and then also for everyone as well. Again, really appreciate you hopping on. Definitely one of the biggest and best class acts in the area. So appreciate your time.
Hey, appreciate it, guys, man. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Cody.
Cody Myers, man, one of the best personalities, like you said. I
What a
mean, we
guy.
talked about it going into this week. One of the
What a
coolest
guy.
coaches in the area.
Definitely, yeah. I
We'll
mean,
see who clutches up this week.
yeah, certainly. And Titans, hey, I mean,
Dee-Mack's got it going for him though.
go ahead. Wait, what,
They
Michael?
got they probably got the nicest facility out of all the small schools. I'd never been there. I'd actually been to Eureka's. Eureka's got a really nice facility too. But I think DMAC, I mean, just seeing it from pictures, I love it. Their helmets are great. I think Tremont's helmet is the best one in the HOI scene. But DMAC is up there. I love their helmets. And obviously, I didn't know their head coach before this podcast episode, but he seems like a great dude. They just have it all going for him right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Yeah, well, the facility is some of the best. I mean, recently renovated. New turf field. You got that brand new video board there, which is super sick. I mean, it is. Its facilities are better than even some Mid Illini schools. So I mean, it's always a fun time going out there, and it's just a fun time seeing any part of Illinois Conference team as well. We may don't want to spill the beans yet, but may have our eyes on another game for the small town throwdown in week 8. Should be a good one. But yeah, again, I said on the halftime show at our Bloomington Normal Community game last week, I talked with Kevin Varney, who is a Bloomington statistician and historian, phenomenal guy, really helpful with Just anything that, that not just us, but anyone that works in media in Central Illinois needs, always filling us in with, rosters, pronunciation guides, stuff like that, stats, super helpful. I said, boy, if there were more Kev Varneys in the world would be an awesome place. And the same goes for Cody Myers as well. So, but anyway, back to the football.
Yeah, so I kind of want to talk on, for we had to just sum up the week six pretty quickly. A couple of other week six games, if you want to talk about them real quick. One that really stood out to me. And listen, this is not just because I went to Pekin, okay? That Pekin Metamora game was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I mean, I don't know if nobody watched it, just know that Pekin was up 28-7 or 28-6. Metamora comes all the way back, takes a 29-28 lead. Pekin gets a rushing touchdown potentially to take the lead, fumbles at the 1 yard line, recovers by Pekin. They take the lead. A couple more things happen. That was a crazy game. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Michael, go ahead.
Um, I don't really have much to go off of from that. I didn't see that game live. I always saw it on like news or recaps of the games, but I will say, that is high school football in Central Illinois in 2024. That close of a game, that high intensity of a game, and that's Mid-Illini for you. I mean, that conference this year is as tight knit as it can possibly be, with I believe 6 out of the 8 teams in that conference at least winning 2 conference games. So I mean, that's Mid-Illini for you. That was a great game. I was honored to see it on the news afterwards. So.
Definitely. And, really, the biggest thing for me is for Pekin, especially, first off, great rebound season had by the Dragons. I talked with Doug Nutter and them before the season, and, they really felt like this year could be, kind of I don't want to say a breakout year because, we all knew how good they were, especially 2 years ago, but kind of, just a big step up for them. And, not a lot of people believed them. And I mean, myself, I was like, okay, I believe you, but I'll kind of wait and see before maybe jump into conclusions. And I think I can jump to the conclusion now that Pekin is one of the best teams in the Mid Illini. They're 4-2 right now through the hardest part of their schedule. They got 3 winnable games to close out. I think they should finish 7-2. And also, again, their non-conference games against Belleville East and Rolling Meadows. Both those teams are no pushovers either. They beat Rolling Meadows, lost in overtime to Belleville East. But, having your opponent succeed will bode well come playoff time when it comes to seeding and all of that. So definitely wanted to mention that. And then also, I mean, Dylan Anderson, sophomore wide receiver, also plays cornerback. He's just made some phenomenal plays every single week. I mean, he should be a all-conference first-team Mid-Illini player, whether it's offense or defense, maybe even both. I don't care. He is I believe had 2 or 3 touchdowns on Friday, and it's just come up so big for them in every big game they've had this year.
His speed at wideout is really like comes around not very often. I mean, he's a track athlete. What I understand, like in junior high, he won a couple of state championships. Was really good as a freshman on running track, and even playing football as a freshman. He's one of those guys that we're going to be hearing his name for a couple of years there with Doug Nutter and the Dragons. Some other big games around the Middle Illini as well, real quickly. Washington 42-6 over East Peoria, Dunlap with a 43-6 win over Canton, and Morton with a big statement win over Limestone 51-6. Making my week 8 prediction. I think it's week 8 against East Peoria. Maybe it's this week 7 against East Peoria. A little bit more scary. Might not be sticking with that.
Yeah, Teddy, and I mean, you look at the Mid Illini, and not to change the subject too much, but you have a great game coming up this week. Dunlap and Washington. That's our WMBD game of the week on CIProud.com. So that'll be a great one for sure. Eagles 5-1, still looking for that first kind of marquee win for them, but I think that this is a year that it could happen. Washington though will be no pushover. They're obviously undefeated in conference right now for a reason. They've already beaten Metamora and Pekin, 2 teams that Dunlap has not beaten or has not played yet. So Panthers are a little bit more proven, but you can never really count out the Eagles, especially with how many weapons they have on offense.
Yeah, John, and you nailed it on the head with Middle Line. I think, like I said before at the conference, I think it's as in depth, like in terms of teams that are in it with that are being really good right now. You have 6 out of the 8 teams in that conference with at least 2 wins. that leaves the Marks to a really good conference. And yeah, it should be really fun to watch the end of that conference because it's going to be interesting. If you think one team's going to win the conference, it may not even happen. There's a good chance that a team's going to come out of nowhere and take away that conference. So it looks to be really good.
In terms of the two really big conferences we focus on, Mid Atlantic and Big 12, it seems like in years past it's been kind of one conference usually has like a powerhouse and is really top heavy. The other one seems a little bit more rounded. This year, it's almost like a little bit of both from both conferences. The Mid Atlantic has a bunch of teams that are competing for playoffs, and they also have Washingtons and and Pegans and Metamoras and stuff like that, teams that could like potentially do something in the playoffs as well. And the Big 12 even more so. I mean, they've got instead of 7 teams like last year, they have 6 teams that can really make the playoffs. 4 teams above 4-2, at least. There's 6 teams, I believe. So my apologies. And then you got the normal communities and the Bloomingtons that are like teams that are highly favored in a lot of those, early playoff games that they're playing. So we've got two really good conferences. We also got some small school teams that are insanely good, but just those Big 12 and Mid Atlantic is what I'm referring to. It's been really exciting this year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Oh.
Go ahead, Michael.
No, you go. No, John, you go ahead. You were talking before me. I apologize.
No, definitely no. I just want to make a quick point about the Big 12. We talk a lot about community Bloomington, Peoria High too as well, and don't forget about Peoria Notre Dame, team that's 4-2 right now and has put up some major points. You look at around the area, who has scored the most points this year. Peoria High is number one, to little people's surprise. Number two in our coverage area right now is Peoria Notre Dame. In terms of scoring offense, that wing T has just been lights out this year behind Jack Handley. They are coming off a 67-8 win over Manual. Huge game for the Irish coming up this week against Bloomington.
Notre Dame is one of those teams I had circled because I wasn't sure if we are going to do this segment or not. I had like kind of like a dark horses of teams like that could really do something in the playoffs, and Notre Dame was one of those teams I have. They're 4-2, so it's not like they're like a 3-3 squad or a 2-4 squad that has some winnable games to come. They are a really good team. The 2 losses they've had have come to insanely good teams. The Peoria High and normal West, right? So both of those teams are very good in the Big 12, and Peoria Notre Dame is just rolling right now, 4 straight.
Definitely.
Yeah,
No,
they're one of those schools that oh, sorry, John. They're
go
one of
ahead.
those
Go
schools
ahead.
that,
Michael we must have a little delay there on the AirPod, I think.
yeah,
So my apologies
yeah,
for
I
that.
mean,
I was going to
I
talk to
have
you and say that I know you had some small school games though from last week that you wanted to kind of highlight as well because there were some very good small school games.
Yeah, about my Wi-Fi. It's the Wi-Fi's problem. It's kind of spotty at times, especially at this time of night. But that's besides the point. We're gonna end this show down regardless. So, yeah, in terms of small school games, I mentioned this one when we had our show last week on Woodburn Field in Bureau Valley. Two teams that were in the middle of the Lincoln Land, or the Lincoln Trail Prairie Land Conference at the time, and I felt like whoever won that game would have a pretty good shot at least of keeping up with Farmington in the standings, and it was Elmwood Burnfield bringing out a 27-21 win. They just kept themselves in the race by doing that. They kept themselves in touch with 5-1 Macomb, 4-1 the conference, and then and Farmington undefeated 6-0 and 5-0 in the conference. So that brings up a really good game coming up this week when Elmwood Burnfield hosts Macomb. That's going to be a really good game for the Lincoln Trail Prairie Land Conference. That's a game to look out for, especially because of what Elmwood Burnfield did this past week.
Yeah, I think that game will be kind of for the for the rights of who's the best contender for Farmington. Should the Farmers slip up? Farmers got a good test against Annawan Weathersfield coming this week, but I think Farmington right now on paper looks like unless something happens that Farmers I think could definitely finish 9-0 the season after playing LVC Week 8 Knoxville. He's had a bit of a down year in Week 9, and it's real touch and just real quick touching on small schools. I know last week in the pod I had mentioned again, IVC had a chance to win against Peru St. B to get their first win, and the Grey Ghosts did. Bryce Ratcliffe, their quarterback, had a phenomenal game. Trying to see exactly what he did here, but he had multiple touchdowns, well over 100 yards through the air. So congratulations to the Grey Ghosts I know I said, yeah, hey, winning football games isn't easy, but it's fun when you do so. And but IVC had a lot of fun. Beating Peru St. Beda. They got some winnable games too coming up this week. And I know they're not really a small school. Sometimes we categorize them as one just because they're smaller than most Big 12 Middle High schools. Is excuse me, normal U High. 33-13 win over 6A number 9 Glenwood. I mean, they didn't just beat Glenwood. They were up 26-7 at the half. I mean, it was domination from the Pioneers in a statement game. Another phenomenal game from Alec Weiland, their quarterback. 350 or 375 yards, something like that. 5 touchdowns. He's thrown for nearly 2,000 yards and 22 touchdowns this season through 6 games. And that's what many quarterbacks would kill for those stats through the entire regular season plus the playoffs. I mean, what he's doing has been nothing short of spectacular for the Pioneers.
Those stats are pretty insane. Like you said, I think anybody would want those stats and have those through 6 games just shows just the high power of Normal U High. They've had a great season so far. When we saw them earlier on against Bloomington, didn't come out with the win, but overall looked really good for a team that was a lot smaller than Bloomington, put a lot of fight for them, and represented well. And guys, I think we could talk about week 6 for forever and ever. There's a lot of good games, a lot of stuff to talk about. One thing I do want to say, I had you guys pick out a player, or maybe if you have more, that's okay too. But at least a player that you guys are expecting here coming into week 7 to have a good game.
I guess
Yeah,
I'll
I'll go first. There we
nope,
go. There's
nope,
there's
Michael, it's
another
all you.
one. Wow,
Here we
we
go
can't stop
again.
doing it. Wow,
It's
okay.
all you,
No,
Michael.
I'll go first. I'll go first. I think PND's Notre Dame's Jack Hamley is going to have a really big week against Bloomington. He's their catalyst for their offense. A pretty explosive running back. He's rushing over 100 yards per game. That's pretty impressive. 110.4 to be exact. 9 touchdowns on the year for him as well. Not only just an explosive running back, but just a great athlete. They use him in the running back and the cornerback positions, so he plays both sides of the ball. He does it very well. In Bloomington's case, their defense is pretty good. They've only allowed up to 16 points in their wins. Obviously, there's or no, excuse no, wait, yeah, and their wins. They did not beat Normal U High. I was thinking about that game, and or
No,
wait,
they did beat normal
I'm
U High,
confused now.
31-38.
Okay, I'm confused now. I was thinking about what you guys were talking about Normal U High. For some reason, I thought they'd be in Bloomington, but no. Bloomington's defense is good, but if Fiende will have success against the Purple Raiders, he'll be a big reason why.
It's a good pick, Michael. And for me, I'm going to go with the game that I'll be broadcasting on Friday in the Dunlap Washington game, and a player that I'm really going to have my eye on. And again, not going to I'm not going to go as far to I don't want to guarantee that anyone's going to have a good game, but a player that I think definitely that I have my eye on, and for good reason, is Dunlap quarterback John Bargan. Obviously the Eagles have a strong air attack. Max Sutter's been doing his thing. But also again, you got to shout out the other weapons too. Dawson Marmion, a player, for them, he's their number 1 wide receiver. That kind of maybe gets overshadowed sometimes by Max Sutter, and 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 Bargan has developed a good connection with them. The second year throwing to them, and Washington, a team that definitely sees some teams throw the ball, but you look at Metamora. Metamora was pretty ground heavy team against them. And Pekin for the most part was, but definitely threw some passes as well. But I think Dunlap's air attack is going to be a big key, to winning that game. Washington's defensive front is strong. Jackson Oldham, a good running back for Dunlap as well, along with Joe Weeks too. Those guys are seeming to be end zone magnets. I think they've had touchdowns in just about every week. But if they can really add the air attack onto a good ground game, I think Dunlap could be in position to move to 6-1. But we'll just see.
Definitely could. And that's why Dunlap's offense is so overpowered. They just got guys that, every position that can make plays. I think they're the highest scoring offense in the Middle Illini right now, like 42 points per game on average or something crazy like that. They've been good all year long. And one player, the player I'm picking here, is a player. He's had a good season. I think might have maybe got a bad rap in terms of early on because wasn't getting the touches that people were expecting, but he has gotten better, and I think he's going to have a great game this week. I got Jadon Cranford for Metamora. He's he started off the season like I mentioned, not getting maybe the touches we would have expected, but the last couple of weeks he played a lot better, and I think he's got a really serviceable matchup this week against Limestone to really do something crazy. So that's the players that we got, and I think we picked some good ones.
Yeah, I think there definitely are two as well. Another player, if I had to pick an honorable mention, I'm going to go to other game that we're broadcasting as well, our small town throwdown, which will be between Stark County and Princeville, two undefeated teams that, and this is recorded before the polls come out on Wednesday, but two teams that might be state ranked. Stark County already is right now, but Princeville's Jake Williams, quarterback for them, has been having a great year. I think Princeville should, throw the ball a lot against Stark County, a team that maybe doesn't see teams that pass the ball as much as Princeville does. And, the Princes do it pretty well, too. Williams has got, a strong touchdown interception ratio. He can run the ball as well. Got good receivers in Hunter Johnson, Jet Benningfield, the small school guys, definitely want to give them a shout out. We've been, seeing what they've done this year and everything. And, what a year, for the Princes. I mean, not every year do you start the year 6-0, and same goes for Stark County. So again, that'll be a can't miss game. You can listen to it on clutchsportsil.com.
Definitely excited to see that one. And with Princeville all season long, like you mentioned, kind of really caught me off guard. Like I think a lot of small schools, when you look at them, have a base, run game that they kind of stick to. But not very often do you see smaller schools, at least not in years past. But it's really changing. Like the last couple of years, Princeville's pass attack is just phenomenal, and they are that's what they emphasize on, and they live by it, they die by it, and it's done them right all year long, and we're going to see how they can do in the next game. But overall, for we got the week 7 coming up, 3 weeks left here. What are some games that stick out for you guys?
Yeah,
I
well,
think the game that I had talked. Oh, well, there we go again. That was perfect,
like
perfect
clockwork,
timing. Wow.
like clockwork.
You can go first this time. You can go first this time.
Sure. Well, yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, again, aside from our two games that we're broadcasting this week, two games I have eye on, definitely P&D Bloomington. Those two teams seem to always play each other close. In the past, it's kind of been a game that is kind of, the ticket to the playoff game, you could say. Got to win that if you want to go in the playoffs. Obviously, this year, I think both teams are going to be in the playoffs. Most likely, regardless, P&D has got a bit tougher of a path or whatever to, getting that fifth win. But certainly I think can do so. Definitely have an eye on that one. Again, Dee-Mack EPG, we talked about it earlier. That's going to be a huge one. And then again, Macomb Elmwood Brimfield. It's going to be a big small school game. Week 8 or week 9, we got some, big time matchups as well. We got Tri-Valley Eureka week 8. We got Bloomington Peoria High in week 8. Those are two huge games in their respective conferences. Then you look ahead to week 9, and you got 3 great middle line matchups. Peoria High faces Normal Community. Just great matchups all around. So again, I think we might be saving the best football for last.
Definitely, and my small town guts can't get past the Elmwood Burnfield Macomb matchup. That's a really big matchup. Now that I mentioned the fact that Elmwood Burnfield had beat Barrow Valley, so they put themselves in position to be on the top of the Lincoln Trail Prairieland Conference. So I can't look past that game. And but it goes to show when John was talking about his big games for the rest of the season, it just goes to show, like we said before, how deep these conferences are. Because if it wasn't for how talented and deep these conferences are, we don't get these games. And there's a ton of big games in whatever conference you go, whether it be the Big 12, Middle Illini, HOIC, the Lincoln Land Prairie Trail Conference. I mean, there's big games all over the place, and even the schools in Illini Prairie that we cover have some big games too. So it just goes to show how deep this area is.
Truly is. It's been a fun football season all year long because like there's so many good teams. It's like every game we pick, it doesn't seem like there's a lopsided. Going into it doesn't seem like there's a lopsided pick because everyone's just so good, and it's been fun. We've got a lot of good football ahead of us as well. Even though we're winding down here in the regular season, playoff football is going to be awesome. Overall, anything else we got to say? We've talked for quite a while. Any lasting things you got to say?
For me, just wanted let people know again. I'm sure a lot of people that listen to this probably do see or at least hear about all the stuff that we put on CSM overtime. But again, lots of stuff again coming your way, especially when playoffs start kind of rolling around. Right now, again, we still have, weekly pick'ems, power rankings, polls. You can be the first to know what teams are ranked where. Feature stories on the teams that we're broadcasting in our WMBD game of the week each week as well. And that's not to exclude our daily roundups too as well. And then, well, the main point I want to get to though is I think starting next week, again, it's a big project, so I got to make sure I carve out enough time for it. But I'm aiming to bring back my CSM bracketology, forecasting the brackets for all 8 classes starting next week on clutchsportsisle.com/overtime. So definitely want to get into with that or whatever. Subscribe today if you haven't already, clutchsportsisle.com/overtime. And also stay tuned to our social media. Maybe we'll sweeten the deal, maybe give out a little full-time playoff sale of some sorts as well if you want to save a few bucks.
Definitely some good stuff on overtime. Be sure to go and tune in. Be sure to go and tune in. And we're gonna wrap it up here. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I'm Teddy Ball, joined by Jonathan Michael Savoie, and head coach Cody Myers from from Dee-Mack. So thank you all for what you did today, and thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.